right, Matt Leonard joins us. Where are you, Matt? Where are you right now?
Right now I'm out in Salt Lake City. Just moved out here in January, so this is now home.
All right. And so, what kind of what are you going to be doing around there? Are you still traveling all over, or are you based there?
Yeah, based out of Salt Lake City. I just got back from Chicago. Was out at CSC, ran a flocking camp out there.
Yeah.
That was super fun. I leave on Wednesday. Today's Monday. I leave on Wednesday for cross keys, get some coaching going on. So yeah, constantly going.
So you were at CSE. Was it the Independence Boogie you were there for?
I was actually there the week prior, so we
Okay.
had a flocking camp going on the week prior. It was pretty fun.
Some of the flocking that's happening now, Matt, is absolutely insane. Tell us all about it, especially some of the people who are not familiar with canopy piloting from other air sports. Just give us a rundown on what flocking is all about.
Yeah, so flocking is kind of something that's a little bit different. It's a little bit newer. Or I shouldn't say it's newer, but it's taken a lot of high performance canopies, taken a lot of pilots from around the world, putting them together and kind of making cool formations in the sky. It's like kind of like non-contact crew. So it's a lot of fun. Started a couple years ago with Max Manow. Me and him, he's based out of Switzerland. Started doing a bunch of this just after like comps or different boogies or things, places we were at, and then ended up developing a group called Momentum, which kind of is based on educating people to kind of just get into it and learn a little bit more about it, about being a better pilot more than being like a swooper, you know what I mean? So being an overall well-rounded pilot and a safe pilot compared to just being a really good person, a good lander, if we will.
It's quite amazing how canopy flight has evolved over the decades, from landing a parachute to performance with the parachute, with the landings, with the swoop competitions and high performance canopy piloting, and now with the flocking. It's opening up all the time, new development. It's quite interesting, really, to see it happening.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of, I don't know, it's opening the door, like I said, for people to be better pilots and better, more well-rounded. Right? So it's not just being like, you can be like a really great swooper or canopy pilot in that sense, but you're not relative to anyone else. You're always just by yourself. It's a very solo individual sport, if you will, swooping.
Yeah.
So now kind of going into that flocking sense of being a good pilot, it's learning how to manage the control range of the parachute to fly with other people. So knowing the parachute and its full control range is a very different thing than always saying go maximum power or maximum speed.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting, isn't it? When you think about different air sports, such as like behind me there, the aerobatic pilots in the planes,
yep.
or with paragliders, hang gliding, they are spending hours under that wing, in that wing, flying it, learning it. For us, for myself, taking myself as an example, as a canopy pilot, my parachute, I open my parachute after my skydive. Normally, I've been load organizing. And I don't have long, I have a few minutes, but my priority is to make sure I'm in open space and then get myself to my starting. I'm not doing high performance landing, so I'm getting myself to the north or the south holding area to begin my pattern, to begin landing. And it feels like a busy time. I haven't got much time to really enjoy the parachute as much.
Yeah. And it's the cool thing about flocking is it makes you a little bit safer and a little more comfortable in those exact scenarios, right? So like you're in the holding pattern, you're in the area, you're in there with traffic and stuff like that, and you know how to control the parachute in a way. So you, like I said, you have its full control range.
Yeah.
So putting yourself in that scenario, at say like an event or just on a busy weekend when you're around parachutes and you're in that landing pattern, knowing how to either slow yourself down or speed yourself up, or even be okay with landing relative to someone else because you know how to manipulate your wing in such a way that's safe to do so around other people.
Yes. Are you you were working with Greg Windmiller? Is that still happening? Are you still in the same?
Yeah. Yep. So I coach for Greg Windmiller. It's Superior Flight Solutions. So we do a lot of like ground coaching for swoop coaching and stuff like that.
What about the competition scene? Is that still happening for you?
Yeah, so I mean, right now should be going over to Russia. What's that? Mid-August.
Yeah.
So the World Meet's happening out there, so that's exciting. We're just now in the process of getting all of finishing up getting the process of getting our visas and stuff like that to make sure we can make it over there and get all the ducks in a row so we can hopefully have a competition.
Do you know, a lot of people might have seen some of the flocking videos, and the one which grabs the public attention is always the head-to-head, the crisscross stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the closing speeds are insane.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of stuff. But this is, just like in anything in skydiving, a lot of air sports, the stuff that comes sometimes can be visually pleasing or things like that are also really high risk, high reward, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, but
I
yeah,
think,
it's insane. Some of the closing speeds, probably somewhere, if I had to guess, I don't know, 100 miles an hour.
yeah, that's enough to give you a good bruise, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I think when we first met, you were just getting into the competition, the canopy piloting. You were involved with control tower, with that side of it. We're probably going back, I don't know, what is it? Is it nearly 10 years?
2015, 2014.
Yeah, okay, it's not quite 10 years yet. But how did your you were already skydiving. How did you move into being excited by the canopy side of it? When did that become something you were aware of that was going to be a life career for you?
So I think like when I started, I had an interesting path in the sport. Like, so I started in college. So I was out at university, was part of US Collegiate Nationals, and then really enjoyed flying parachutes from just a young jump number, and said, I really want to get into swooping, and had a kind of path of just constant coaching. I did like 2 or 3 canopy courses a year, especially in the early years. And what I did while I was at school is I worked at the drop zone and essentially became a videographer and an instructor, so that way I could get free swoops. So I learned to kind of, I wouldn't say like cheat the system, but I mean, that's the way I looked at it is I became a videographer, so that way I had essentially a free hop and pop, or from 5,000 feet down, it was like my own skydive.
Where was this?
A job to do
which drop zone? Which drop zone was it?
I was out at Jumptown in Western Mass.
Yeah.
So it's based out of Orange. It's one of the older commercial drop zones in the United States. I think it was where they held the very first world meet ever.
Yeah,
if
wow.
I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's pretty cool. A lot of history out there. It's one of the first. I think it was like 1964, something like that. They had a world meet.
Yeah.
So, but so I used that, and it was progressed. I enjoyed competition from the collegiate side. So I ended up doing 4-way belly for a little while, then moved into some free flying and canopy piloting.
Yeah. Did you you entered the real world, didn't you, after school? Like, you didn't go into full-time skydiving, you were engineering, and tell us about what you did. What was your life like?
So I was a chemical engineer. I graduated. I moved out to New York. And it was like a little secret life compared to skydiving. In the skydiving world, it was just a completely different thing. But yeah, I was a process engineer for a few years, then it becoming an engineering manager pretty early, and had a team on a manufacturing floor, and then liked it, loved the job. It was just and I was doing skydiving all the time on the side.
Yeah.
So I was working 7 days a week for a couple of years, and then didn't want to be at the company in New York. Just wanted to change of scenery, and I said, let me give myself 2 years into full-time skydiving and see how that plays out. And I hit 2 years in June of last year.
Yeah.
So this is now 3 years, actually, just coming up right now, as of like a week ago.
Excellent. So, congratulations.
Yeah.
So how long were you there in New York in the engineering lifestyle? How long were you living that for? Was it 15 years, you say?
No, I was probably, so I graduated, let's see, I was at that company for 6 years.
Right.
I think. Yeah. So it was nice. It was good. But it's now in a full-time skydiving thing. So enjoying that for right now.
Were you living the New York high life, fancy restaurants and a nice apartment?
No, I mean, it was different because I was full-time skydiving too. So it was really interesting. It was like, I'd go to work, I'd come home at like 6, eat dinner, do that a couple days a week, and then I'd leave either that or like say like Friday or whatever it was. I'd leave right at 6 o'clock in the evening and go straight to a drop zone, straight to a competition. Or I was coaching for Greg sometimes as well, so I'd get on a plane and go to a drop zone to go coach, and I'd fly back at either a red eye landing at like 7 in the morning and go straight to work, or I'd land Sunday night at midnight and rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
So did that for quite a few years, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was what it was. I enjoyed the engineering work. I enjoyed the side of things, and I think it kind of helped me also from the coaching side of things, relate to a lot of different people. I mean, there's a lot of engineers and there's a lot of just people in skydiving that just like their brain thinks kind of more, a little bit more mathematically or a little bit more physically and stuff like that. Or, so it's kind of a good way to relate to people sometimes.
And for sure as well, being in that kind of a world, you'll develop your business skills and, you know, how to structure your day and how to interact with people. You know, it makes a big difference. I think gone are the days where, in all air sports, but especially in skydiving, you can get somebody who's just never had any training in how to coach people. You need to have that kind of a basic background these days, I think, to get the best out of anybody.
Yeah, it definitely, the experience that I had in that environment for sure made me a better coach, I think. You know, between going into management and learning how to like coach people or mentor people through different environments, things like that, in a corporate environment, just to make the best out of people that they could. I mean, it all translates, you know. The only difference is, you know, they had to do it for a job and I was getting paid for it, I guess.
Yeah.
But to, you know, on the weekends, it's kind of the passion for a lot of people. You know, it's a weekend project, or, you know, most of the people are weekend warriors, if you will. You know, they have all these other side jobs, things like that, but they still want to progress and get better.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Traditionally, canopy piloting and people with a parachute, I would say in a skydiving world, it's probably the area where she's got the most ego. So you get somebody, what I'm trying to say is, like somebody like me with 200 or 300 jumps years ago, thinking I knew what I was doing when I obviously didn't, and getting somebody like yourself to break that down without pissing me off too much. You know, that's a balance, must be.
It is. It's a huge balance. I mean, there's a lot of ego in the sport because then I haven't really figured out, I mean, why so much. But I mean, it's something that we all take that we want to do on the side. It's something that we want to be good at. You know what I mean? A lot of people, I don't think a lot of people enjoy doing something and sucking at it, you know?
Right.
So obviously, you know, it's interesting when you see from like a coaching aspect how passionate people can be and how a lot of those egos are driven. It might be from just fulfilling a different side of life that they don't have in other places. You know, in a corporate environment, sometimes you just go to work, that's what you do with your day, and then you go home. And now in skydiving, it's a kind of a release for people, you know. So people come in and they want to be good at it. You know, they're driven to be good at it. So sometimes when they're not good at it, it really bruises the ego, you know.
Yeah.
So that's where you see a lot of people being like, you know, coming up or making a mistake in the landing area, and they come up and you're like, hey, did you mean to do that? And people get really defensive, you know.
Right.
And it happens all the time. But
hey, we've all done it, eh? We've all done it. We've all been there, you know.
It is a you know, it's, and finding, I think, the way to talk to people has been something that's something that we've developed like a good or way to say this really, but that's something I've developed over the years is how to talk to people, you know, especially in those driven moments, you know, because like sometimes when it's like, okay, everyone's really heated in the moment, you know, because they're just passionate about it, you know. And so say that like landing scenario, for example, learning to talk to them maybe when they come into the hangar, you know, reading the room of whether did they realize what they did or they did not realize what they did yet, or but yeah, talking to people in that moment and then coaching them through that's actually an important part.
It is. I know I've done some little solo research myself when I was full-time in the sport, you know, when I was doing ground control, and I would take a measure how people were talking and walking when they were going to the plane.
Yeah.
Be very quite normal and relaxed. And when they've landed, no matter how they landed, whatever they've done, could be the most simple jump ever, but that adrenaline's in and people are louder and they're talking louder and they're talking faster.
Yeah.
So they've got that effect of that pulse jump. And like you say, you know, how do you deal with that then? You've got to let them just come down a little bit. Does that take 10, 15 minutes, a packed job or whatever, before you can approach? It's very interesting, isn't it?
It is. I find that psychological aspect of it, like, it is, I don't know, I find it very interesting and trying to like coach around that or at least approach people and create a learning experience from it, right? So from you know, whether you're organizing a drop zone like yourself and you're doing a bunch of FS stuff and you see like someone might have done something and they're not, it was not maybe the safest decision that they made, you know? And it's like, okay, they recognize that. And that now that you have another, say, person that's very emotionally driven or emotionally charged because, you know, that affected him, or he didn't feel it was safe and he got scared. You know, people kind of arguing in the landing area, and you're trying to diffuse that, and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
But no, finding out the best time to do that for, you know, those two people and create a learning experience, I think is super important.
Yeah.
You know, but I find that a psychological aspect fascinating sometimes, especially in the sport.
Yeah. Did you? What were you doing as a kid? Where did you grow up, Matt? Where were you growing up as a kid?
I grew up in Medford, Massachusetts. It's right outside of Boston. It's about 3 miles north of the city, next to Somerville, Cambridge. Grew up out there. Went to college at University of Massachusetts in Amherst, and then just, like I said, moved to New York, and then was on the road. You know, I moved once I left the job in New York, quit the job, and started traveling the world. So I was in Switzerland a bunch. I spent like probably 6 months a year in Switzerland for the past like 3-4 years.
Yeah.
So
you have
pretty good. And
Dubai and all the places, and
and now mostly with everything going on recently, I decided to pay rent somewhere, so that's good. So instead of constantly on the road, so I'm settling down kind of in Salt Lake City, just because again, those same, like, it's air sports, right? So there's a bunch of paragliding, there's speed riding, there's a bunch of other things out here as well. It's a great place within the United States to do that. So just settled out here recently, and
you've done a bit of paragliding, haven't you? You've been paragliding a while.
Paragliding, speed riding, speed flying, excuse me.
How
getting into it a little bit more out here.
How did you start with the paragliding? Did you go and do a basic course, or was it with a friend, or how did you get into it?
So the first couple of times I did it, I went with a friend out in Lauterbrunnen. I was out in Murin in Switzerland, and it was an awesome experience. And then you know, looking back at it, I'm like, oh, that was probably not the smartest way to start or do things. You would never coach someone to just say, you know, send it, you know, go and do it. So I came out to Utah and got they have different paragliding ratings. So I ended up getting what's considered a P2. So it's pretty much like an entry level license for paragliding.
Yeah, good. It's as a child, when you were growing up, were you doing any sports then? Were you getting any coaching from other people?
I grew up. So I was at Boston and did a lot of hockey was a big thing growing up. Baseball, and then I moved into, when I got into college, I stayed with pretty much just baseball. I ended up running a bit, cross country in high school, and in college I went right into skydiving. So like at college, I went in and I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. Let's see all the club sports, and they had like club baseball, things like that. And I was like, yeah, we'll continue this. You know, seems like a cool thing to continue on or start with. And then I found skydiving, and then pretty much the rest of my time was, that was it. But growing up, I used to play guitar a little bit. But other than that, just kind of consumed myself mostly with kind of baseball was a pretty big one, and skiing in the winter. And now, so being out in Salt Lake, skiing is an amazing sport out here. They had an amazing winter this just past year with a bunch of snow. So it was a lot of fun.
What was Maxine out there a little bit? Maxine Tate, did you catch it?
Yeah, Maxine. So when I moved out here, I actually moved in with Maxine.
Right.
So so we lived together. We had a ski pass that was at the same mountains. So we were able to get up in the morning. We were getting up at like 6:30 in the morning, going to the ski resorts, trying to get before the crowds. And they had some great powder days this year. So it was a lot of fun. We had a blast between the two of us going to a couple different mountains this year.
It's interesting times at the moment, Matt. Things are opening up, and travel's getting back on the radar. I must admit, I've opened my Delta app for the first time this week in about a year. Things are starting to move a little bit. How do you feel about that? The potential for traveling again, for getting around the world, being in Europe, being in other places. Is it starting to come into your diary a little bit, or not?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been traveling for the most. Well, I wouldn't say for the most part, but just with work and stuff like that, I've been traveling a little bit, even during some of the, I wouldn't say during like the hard lockdown at the beginning. But once things opening up last summer, I started traveling a little bit and coaching again. So that was, and I kind of stayed on that rhythm for most of the winter and things like that. I did make it, I was able to get over to Switzerland a couple times. I was over there for a couple days in December as well as last September. And so, I mean, but now looking at it, and as the world starts to change and it's opening up to everyone, I think it's going to create different, for sure, a different kind of like culture, environment around the sport. And it's interesting because you look at different, at least in the air sports world, right? Like different boogies, things like that, or skills camps. And now they're not, you know, these camps aren't geared towards maybe pulling in a bunch of organizers from around the world. They're focusing on a lot of local talent.
Yes.
Right. So, which is interesting. It kind of changed that norm of having these big names come in from around the world to, well, you know what? Can we use this local talent and stuff like that at our disposal? And I think it's given a lot of people in the air sports industry an opportunity, you know, especially for people that are starting and to get into that coaching or organizing role.
Yeah.
And it's we'll see how it kind of pans out for this year. Kind of excited. We'll see how, like I said, we get the World Meet coming up in Russia.
Yeah.
And then U.S. Nationals will be in Arizona in the fall.
Yeah.
So that'll be exciting as well.
Yeah. How's the pond coming along, do you know?
Yeah, I know, right? I haven't seen it yet in Arizona. So hopefully I'm going to try and make it down there in September, about a month before Nationals, have a little training week.
So you're involved, obviously, we've talked about coaching skydivers and the members of the public. You're also involved in coaching the military. I don't know if you can talk about that at all, or if it's all top secret or anything, but can you tell us anything about, you know, the coaching on that side of it? Does it differ much from doing the general skydivers, or is it something you can't talk about? I don't know.
Oh, no, I mean, it's a lot of just, it's a lot of the same skills we teach in skydiving. It's just more, my role, at least for what I teach primarily, is a lot of air-to-air stuff. So flocking, essentially, right? So just teaching people how to fly parachutes relative to each other. Doesn't matter the size, you know, between anything that's super, like in the civilian world, we use all these fast, cool parachutes, and in the military worlds, that's not the, you know, the job role for those individuals. So they'll use bigger parachutes.
Yes.
So, I mean, all the fundamentals still apply, and you get to fly relative to other people. You're just on, you know, something that's 360 square feet instead of, you know, 75 square feet, you know.
Interesting. Do you teach any stuff that you can't talk about?
There's things for sure that you're not supposed to, you wouldn't really like mention, or things like that. I mean, there's a,
well, don't mention,
I mean, they have groups. Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, we'll have a beer one day and have a chat.
Yeah, right. No,
so
I mean, it's a lot of the fundamentals are still the same, though, you know.
Yeah.
So that's, like I said, my primary role is just to teach people how to fly parachutes close to each other, really efficiently, and every once in a while, you know, I'll use like an AFF rating as well for certain things, for coaching and things like that, in that sense. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's very rewarding too. You know, like it's very different psychologically working with groups of people that their job, or it's like it is their job to do this kind of a role, right? As opposed to in skydiving, it's not a job for most of the people that I'm coaching, right? It's a lot of weekend warriors, or it's a lot of just people that want to have fun in the sport. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a different angle.
So the coaching style is a little bit different.
Yeah.
So that's always pretty interesting to see, and it's kind of rewarding. And a lot of these individuals are super turned on. They're very intelligent, and they're ready to go after it, you know? So it's funny, you know, teaching individuals that it's their job, and, you know, we'll take someone with 50, 60, 70 jumps and do things that, you know, it takes someone with 500 jumps to be able to do it in the civilian world, just because, just difference, you know, a little bit difference in what the application is, you know?
Yeah. What are you enjoying? What's giving you a buzz right now? What are you enjoying with your flying? Personally?
A lot of the flocking stuff, you know. I was heavy into like the canopy piloting stuff, you know, like between going to the world meets. I mean, starting in Poland was my first world meet, actually, the 2018.
Yes.
So going from there, and then we had South Africa, and now we got Russia coming up, things like that. That was like a huge passion, you know, for sure, or a driving force for me. And I think now the flocking stuff has definitely taken over a little bit of that role, as competitions kind of over the last year had shut down, and gathering and stuff like that. Yeah, it's really cool to see people and to coach something that's not really, at least in civilian, where it wasn't coached that much. You know, that wasn't something taking people with, you know, small parachutes and doing that kind of flocking stuff, or even we have an event now through Momentum that's geared towards those mid-sized parachutes.
Right.
So those, you know, like 100s through, or like, you know, 107 through 150.
Yes.
You know, so a lot of like mid-range type parachutes.
Yes.
Typically, they're still considered high performance parachutes, right? By definition, but it's you know, taking those and doing the same sort of application. You don't have to fly a small parachute to do all this kind of flocking stuff. You can do it on all the bigger ones.
That'll be for me.
Right? So
I'm on a 107 Sabre 3. So.
Yeah, there you go. Right. I just actually just got a Sabre 3 107.
Yeah, you like it?
Yeah, man, I love it. And it's, man, the control range. So for everything that I'm doing exactly in this mid-range parachute sizes and coaching and stuff like that, I'm able to fly with anything up to a 150 and all the way down to even some of the smaller sizes. Wow. So the control range is really big on the Sabre 3s. It's really cool.
Yeah. So what would be the entry level for somebody who wants to get into flocking? What would they need before they can start with you?
There's no really like need. I guess it's more of like just coming with like an open mind, right? So you can do it. I don't know if there's any camps right now geared towards some of the bigger sizes, like being 170 and higher. But we do a camp that's geared again towards like 107 through 150-ish. And that's kind of, as long as you come with an open mind, and I think we do have a requirement for like a B license canopy course, you know what I mean? But you really shouldn't be probably on like a 107 without, you know, maybe a canopy course. So that's kind of like the only real requirement that we have, and just kind of coming with an open book, staying current, and then you'll come to the camp and hopefully you'll learn a lot about being like a better pilot. Like I said, it's not about being a good lander, it's about being a good pilot, right? Understanding, in skydiving, we don't have lane, it's not like driving on a highway where we have lanes, you know what I mean? So you know where people are coming from all the time. Yeah. So in the landing pattern, I mean, people can come from anywhere, and they do come from anywhere, right? Yeah. So, and we don't have blinkers, but being able to have that situational awareness and then understand what controls you can do to fit yourself within that lane, right? You know, we're kind of told, I teach a lot of courses now, and sometimes students in their mind will have this mindset of, well, I have to fly, full flight. Like once I start my pattern, that's it. Like there's no other way to change this. And it's like, I have to do this or whatever. And it's just because that was the way that they learned. That was the way that they were trained. And as a student, that's kind of what we almost tell A-license students, like, okay, once you start, hands all the way up, feet knees together, let's keep it in full flight, right? But, that's on a Navigator 260.
Yes.
And some people then, will take that into those later stages, in their skydiving career. And, if I was to tell, Kurt Bartholomew, for example, like do a pattern starting at 1,000 feet, 1,600 and 300, I'm pretty sure the parachutes that, we fly on that level, you can't really turn at 300 feet for final. Yeah. So, learning and teaching how to, eventually that these things evolve throughout your skydiving career and as you progress in canopy piloting, and when to do that and how to do that is kind of rewarding. And then into the flocking stuff, it's just, like I said, it's being a better pilot, learning how to be in that lane of traffic with people.
Yeah. And what about after Tanay, after the Mondial? That's going to be getting into September. What have we got planned for the last quarter of the year, Matt?
Last quarter, so coming up, we have PIA. PIA is right after Tanay, so I'll be at PIA, and then September might be out in Slovenia. There's an event out there, Adventure Boogie, that might be happening. I've gone out there a few times with Tora, doing a lot of like mountain swooping, stuff like that. So they have that portion of the event, which I'll go out and hopefully organize with them. And then October is nationals. Yeah. And then November, December is kind of right now just kind of tapering off. Nice. So no plans yet for that later in the year, but I'm sure something will come. Probably a lot of coaching, things like that.
Good stuff. Yeah. Well, Matt, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you and learn a bit more about you. We never really get the chance to have these half-an-hour conversations, do we? It's between lifts or exactly. It's high fives and we don't get the much chance of a chat, so it's good to spend some time.
Absolutely.
And might see you in Russia. I might see you somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, I'll see you in Russia.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see how the system works. But we're
Yeah, right.
plans. You take care, buddy. You take care,
Take
man.
care. Thanks for the time, and I'll hopefully see you soon.
See you soon, man. Bye bye.
Bye.